I didn't tell you I was going to bring this up, but I think it's like an honest part of the journey. Um, it's important to acknowledge that I got scared after our conversation. We had a really beautiful conversation, and I talked about it in my life with like my therapist and people who knew about the journey I was embarking on. But I think I might have ghosted you.
Yeah,
Like whether
that's totally
intentional,
okay.
whether intentional or not, I didn't check back in for months.
Mm.
And it's because I went inward with like what we talked about, and started creating with it, and reached out when it felt okay. But I did have a lot of guilt around that, actually. So
Oh, well, I want you to know there's no hurt feelings around that at all.
no,
And
no,
going inward is exactly what we're looking for. And how much
exactly,
magic came from going inward for you since,
exactly.
not only since our conversation, but you have been doing inner work for a long time to be able to come to this place of
Hmm.
knowing in your authenticity, love for yourself, to actually start being more vocal about your story. So
Yeah,
I would
exactly.
love for you to share about that. How did that transition
Right.
happen?
Okay, so my name is Madeline, and my pronouns are she, her, and I run the Project Mashed page, and essentially Project Mashed is the beginning of a pelvic pain awareness platform that I'm running. However, the first project we're doing on it is a series that I wrote, an on-screen limited series titled Mashed, and it's about female pelvic pain, namely my experiences with vaginismus, but there are plans to expand it to encompass all kinds of pelvic pain. And that actually started, look, I mean, it started, I've said this a couple of times publicly now, but I was staying with friends at the beginning of the pandemic, a whole group of us, and everyone wanted to go out on the water. And I particularly wanted to go out on the water because I'm a water baby, and I got my period that day and wasn't able to go because I still struggle with tampon use.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really hard. Not everyone in this group, I don't think anyone in this group really knew the extent of what I lived with in terms of the vaginismus. I don't think I'd necessarily used the word with any of them.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very confusing why the person pushing to go out on the water was the one that suddenly couldn't. And I thought to myself, I just cannot live like this anymore. Um, so I told my my psychotherapist that day. I just like stomached it. I wrote it down and I said it. And then that weekend, I wrote the bones of what became mashed. I told my therapist on the Friday evening, and then by Sunday evening, I had the first draft of the script. And then throughout the rest of the summer, I started working on it emotionally. Started kind of unpacking from that end, and then I started going to physical therapy late summer. And then I had a conversation with you in the fall. And around December last year, I really hit the ground running with finalizing the script and making it something that I was ready to share with the world. And
That's amazing.
essentially, the script follows a woman who is someone that is incredibly engaged in her sexuality, but because of the vaginismus, negotiates it in a way that's like rushed and reckless. And we also jump between her experiences with potentially dangerous and harmful sexual encounters and her work with EMDR trauma therapy.
And this is all inspired by your story, or would you say it's even like a very much the case that you experienced with rushed, reckless intimacy, dangerous situations, right?
Yeah, and like going too far in one direction to overcompensate overcompensate full stop, because you feel like you're not living up to whatever standard of performative sexuality you're supposed to be. So overcompensating in ways that I don't necessarily mean literally dangerous, although sometimes, but dangerous in a way that it harms you and your partner in some way when you're not there present with them, and you're too busy trying to hide a particular part of you that doesn't deserve to be hidden. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can relate to this at all, but these games we play when we're not public or not even public, but open about our vaginismus and our pain, I found myself falling into a lot of, like, whether intentional or not, a lot of manipulative behavior and a lot of like hiding and secrecy, not in the efforts of hurting anyone else, but in the efforts of protecting myself.
Yes, that's such a key component, right? It adds to the cycle of pain with good intention for protection. So it's always that we had the desire to do good for ourselves, yet it just wasn't helpful in the moment. And we only find out about that after the fact, right?
Exactly. So the series is based on certain experiences I've had. Yes. However, it is, it's fictional, it's hyperbolic, and I hope that other people see themselves reflected in it, and that the experiences are universal while there are like nuanced, personal bits in there.
Yeah. I'm so glad you are putting this work out into the world, and you are opening your heart to be able to share that with everyone, because it is an incredibly vulnerable place to be right now, right? With your story being out in the public. And we even talked about, yeah, go ahead.
No, it is, you're right that it is incredibly vulnerable. But I will say that I've never felt more free with my story. And that's just, oh God, I'm a bit mad at myself for saying that, because I know that if I was in a different part of my journey and I heard someone else say that, I'd be like, well, must be nice. Must be nice that you're there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But also, I really mean it when I say, like, this time last year when I had started writing and started speaking to more people about it, I still wasn't in the place I'm in now, thinking that I would ever be talking this candidly about it on like a vaginismus platform. Absolutely not.
Yeah, you can't.
It's all possible.
You can't see it until it happens. And someone beautifully commented, extremely inspiring. Thank you for sharing your truth and for giving a voice to vaginismus.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for that comment, because here's something that has really struck me, and the women behind Tight Lipped talk about this in the podcast. They talk about this as well. When they started talking about it, and when I started talking about it, I have received an outpouring of people in my life and beyond who live with the same condition, the same diagnosis, or something similar, and have just not had a word for it, or have not had anyone to talk to about it, or have been so ashamed to talk about it. And I'm like, that is my experience. I spent my entire life thinking I was so abnormal and that no one else had this experience. But we're all, I got a couple of messages that all said something to the effect of like, and I can't believe you were in the same room as me and we were having the same experience. And you were there all along and you were right beside me.
Oh my goodness, yes. When I share with groups of people now, and one particular example, after playing volleyball, I was playing mostly with men, and we were in this circle, and we had kind of just gotten to know each other recently, and they asked, what do you do? And I told them what I do. I help people overcome painful sex, and vaginismus in particular. And when I say this word, then I have to say, it rhymes with Christmas, so they can try to remember it, and add a little bit of like education yet normalcy to the facial expression I see on their face, because all of a sudden there's shame related to it, like, oh, we're talking about sex all of a sudden, right? And there's this education going on to people who weren't aware, yet in so many cases there's that one person, two people in the group that you see their eyes and there is a familiarity there, whether it was their partner or themselves or somebody they knew.
I recently had an interaction with an older gentleman. He's in his late 70s, must be close to his 80s. And he said he had seen my Seed and Spark campaign. This is someone in my life that I see almost daily through some work that I do. And he said he saw the campaign for MAShed and he watched the promo video. And he said, I'm going to have to watch it a few more times, and I'm going to have to really try and digest what I'm watching, because it brought me back to nearly 50 years ago with his first wife. And he said we struggled with something very much like this, but no one had the language or the understanding to help. So I felt like I was constantly hurting her, and we never overcame it. And she has since passed. And I didn't know what this was. And I think this is what it was. So that was something. I know we need better sex education and better research in these areas, but that was something that really struck me when it was like a man, an older gentleman, a completely different generation. It's not like these issues just suddenly began in the last 20 years. this is so human. So that
And
was
they
something that
don't
really touched me.
and they don't discriminate. They don't discriminate between country where you live, right? Race, the way we've been brought up, our sexual preferences. That's another part of this that I'd love to explore with you. Please tell me about how you have seen in your life they don't discriminate, right? So much of this vaginismus language is about penetrative sex, about penile vaginal sex, PIV sex, but that is not the full story.
Absolutely. Also, like, I had to do with my sexuality. I've had to, like, I think sexuality can be complicated, is complicated for most queer people, but I had to do so many loops. I'm still doing so many loops with this because I identify as queer. I don't know what that means. I love who I love. I'm attracted to who I'm attracted to. But for a long time, when I was having issues with my first boyfriend, I thought that the reason I was experiencing so much truly debilitating pain was because I was like, I must be gay. My family are really awesome. Like, I didn't have any shame around sharing that with. If that were the case, that would be okay. I would know I was loved, which is very lucky. But I couldn't. So in my mind, I'm like, I'm gay, and I have internalized homophobia, and that's what this is. But that was like very compartmentalized because it neglected the fact that I was 17 and couldn't use a tampon and wasn't able to sit through a pap smear. And suddenly the vaginismus became, I didn't have the word for vaginismus, but it became so sex-based and not just like wholly, not just something that's part of my being in its entirety, not only related to sex. So when I finally did start, a few years later, when I finally did start exploring my sexuality, and the same things were coming up no matter the gender of who I was sleeping with or romantically involved with, I went, this is a bigger problem. I can no longer I think it was a convenient excuse for me to say, oh, well, it's because I'm denying my sexuality. That felt like an easy excuse, and it felt like once I accepted my sexuality, it'd be fixed. And that was it wasn't easy, but it was an easy way out, or an easy argument out. I mean, I did accept my sexuality, and the problem, it wasn't magically fixed. I was like, okay, there's more healing here to be done. And then I felt like I had to do a reverse coming out, which I know is ridiculous, but I felt like I had to be like, oh, just kidding, everybody. I still like everyone in some capacity. I was, gotcha. So that's something that I'm really proud that MASH'd explores, that the series explores, is that you can have like painful sexual interactions, physical sexual interactions with any gender. And like, sex isn't just penetrative.
Such a huge realization to come to peace
Right?
with, that we have been having sex ever since the first time we tried anything sexual related, right? It was not losing our virginity. And Shelby speaks about this beautifully from Tightly Wound, about having our sexual debut should be the language that we use rather than losing our virginity.
I love that. That film was the first, so as an artist, the first thing I did when I finally got the language for vaginismus was Google, rather than be like, how to fix it, I Googled like art about vaginismus, films about vaginismus, documentaries about vaginismus. Not, I mean, as you know, not much comes up. But I found Tightly Wound, and that was such an awesome representation of vaginismus and Shelby's specific experience. And I have watched that film, I mean, so many times now, and I share it to a lot of people that I'm trying to communicate the experience with. The thing that I got lost in by the end of that was that I was like, this is so much of my experience, but I don't. It was a very hetero experience, true to Shelby's experience of herself at that time. So I was like, I want to one day make art about this that represents the communities that I feel I belong in, which is what MASH'd is. So that's also the mental health community, the queer community. Also, it's really, if I do say so myself, it's very funny. I love that this series although dark, has such a humorous lens because it doesn't have to all be doom and gloom, and we don't all have to be quiet wallflowers mourning our sexuality. The series is incredibly funny and incredibly sex positive. And we're full, I'm a full human being. Like most people who find out I have this condition, I am still using the word condition for myself. That does not mean it is the right word for everyone else.
Beautiful.
I am still, most people are a bit taken aback because I am incredibly engaged and present in my life. I'm incredibly sexual. I'm incredibly outgoing. So this feels like it feels like an unintegrated part of me. But the series, I think, does a good job of showing all those things can exist at once, both, all.
It's so often that we create a connection between painful sex as an experience that we're having in this current moment and confidence, where if one is not available, the other needs to be out of the picture too,
Right.
because we're not allowed to be confident if we cannot be engaging in penetration. How wild is that, right? We have this connection on a subconscious level, but it is so illogical.
And yeah, I just watched I mean, this is a little off topic, but something you just said, it's about education, right? And the people doing the educating on these things, I almost don't blame them because they are educating based on the models they have to educate with. And I'm like, how do we tear this shit down? How do we get to the root of this? Like, what is, I mean, maybe you have, this wasn't one of my questions for you, but since we're here, what do you think the root of this is, and why the shame is built up, and why we're having to do our own work in order to find our own healing, and our healing isn't immediately accessible to us? Like, why do you think that is? Where does that stem from? I don't know. I don't have an answer to that.
Yeah, these are some of my thoughts, right? Shame, the root of it has been emotional trauma of some sort, and it doesn't even necessarily need to be sexual related,
Right.
because so often our emotional trauma might be related around the fear of things going wrong in life in general, or fear of whatever gender our partner might be, whether our father or our mother was sort of an abusive figure. And the other piece of this is that it wasn't even ours. It's previous generations. Right. And we have this responsibility, which is so heavy to accept, to actually put out the fires that were started generations and generations ago.
I hear that. Yeah.
Yeah. As for why we don't have help accessible, oh man, that brings a lot of anger and rage that needs to be processed around this. The medical system, the communities that try their best in many ways, but they have lived in a shame-steeped culture around sex. And so this is not accessible to them, and therefore they cannot provide it to us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is why I was talking with someone about this just the other day. The arts are not obsolete in this. The arts are what we consume and what we turn to when we're like looking to connect with our humanity, or zone out from our humanity. Both of those are completely valid. But they do create change in the zeitgeist, and when the zeitgeist starts talking about certain artistic projects or endeavors, politics start to listen, and politics can change healthcare. It's, you know, this is all interconnected. So this is why I think it's important what you and I are both doing, and what so many people in this arena are doing. I think we have to keep creating this like melding of medicine and science and art and advocacy and education, because the louder we get, the more we can actually enact legitimate change within the systems and within our governing systems, that can allow us to, maybe go to pelvic health physical therapy for the same price it is able to cost someone to get an erectile dysfunction pill.
Yes. And I love what you said about the arts, because not only do the arts create this sense of visibility in our systems and our decision makers, but they also touch us on such a deep level where we're able to relate to those characters and feel like we're not alone
Yeah.
from a real standpoint, not an article we read on a medical website that it just explains the definition of vaginismus and how to quote unquote treat it.
Because you see yourself reflected through an actual human experience. I bearing witness to other people's stories is the way that I am most able to confront my own, for sure, for sure. When I watch shows like Fleabag or I May Destroy You or even Feel Good on Netflix, Mae Martin's new series, those shows heavily influenced the way MASH was written, and allowed me to, because I saw parts of myself in those stories, I was able to tell my story in a more confident, truthful way.
Yeah. Tell me a bit more about what else influenced the way that MASH was written, or even the ideas that are going to be coming in for you.
Yeah.
I know you shared one story about a woman that you spoke to at work, whether it was work
Right.
or
Yeah. I know what you're
that's the
talking
one.
about.
I don't know if there's something else you want to share.
Right. One story I had, a particular job I work at, allows me to have access to a lot of really, really, like, a lot of people. And most people are really cool when you ask them the right questions. Really interesting when you're interested. And I've been talking about MASH a lot, and like I said, the more I talk about it, the more people say, I know someone with that, I have my own issues with that. I thought I was the only one, and people are starting to disclose a lot. And I have plans for this to be a larger anthology. Right now, it's exploring vaginismus, there's a realm where the next series represents endometriosis, and the next series these are all the beginnings of something bigger. But endometriosis, and the next one is IVF and miscarriage, and then vulvodynia for one. All these women's or people with vaginas, pelvic health concerns. And I was talking to a woman at my job about this, and she lent. Is this the story you're talking about?
Yeah.
And she leant into me, and she said, "You know what you could do? You could do one." And she whispered in my ear and said, "On urinary incontinence." And I looked at her, and I had to like stifle a chuckle, because I thought it was so beautiful. She was so vulnerable, and I could tell so ashamed, and felt like she had a space to mention that to me. And I thought to myself, this is so not embarrassing or shameful for me. I think it's awesome that she thinks a series should be made on that. I wish she didn't feel shame around this. And then suddenly it clicked. I was like, Jesus, like, she doesn't feel shame about vaginismus because she doesn't live with it. Mm-hmm. So when I say vaginismus to her, she has the same thing. She's like, oh, sweet love, like, you're so much more than that. There is no need to be embarrassed or ashamed. And I had the exact experience in response to her talking about urinary incontinence.
That's so beautiful. That your life and the people that are in it are the catalyst to creation for you. Right. Because you are representing so many voices, so many real souls out there who are actually living through their unique experience. And we're all fighting a hard battle.
And I tell you what, when she said that to me, I did have the like opening image of whatever that could, whether it's a series or another limited, I'm not sure, but I had the opening image of what that looked like, because she said those words to me in a particular way. I just suddenly had this like visceral response, an imagistic response. Mm-hmm. So she sparked something. We got to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, incredible.
I now that I'm talking about it more and more, I can't believe I honor the part of me that did once feel so alone, but I can't believe I did. I can't believe I once felt like I was so isolated.
I got goosebumps when you said that, because we feel like there's a darkness around us. And that feeling of asking ourselves the question, like, why me, right? We look at the statistics, one in however many I remember seeing, and I was saying to myself, like, I'm the only one in this world that's going through this. And as soon as we kind of turn on the light and we start to look into the darkness and understand, like, oh, there's that person, there's that story, we are kind of dumbfounded by how we could ever have felt alone. So I'm so
Exactly.
glad that
Dumbfounded.
communities, yeah, that communities like these exist. People, other people sharing their stories, even more bravely so, being in the trenches, right? Experiencing vaginismus in the moment and still being online and sharing your story.
Well, that's something that I was like was hard for me to grapple with initially, because a lot of the stories I do see shared, there is actually a bigger community around this than I ever thought. And a lot of the stories I see get shared, though, are people who have had some form or some version of physical success with this. And that is not my experience yet. So I did question my validity in sharing my experiences. But then I went inward and was like, no, how much it would have helped how much I would have been able to heal in conjunction with someone else, knowing that there are other people out there being able to talk about their experiences, still truly in the thick of it, with operating with different metrics of success. My definition of success in healing has definitely altered since launching Project Mashed.
Beautiful. What would you say that is for you, if you'd like to share?
I think the ability, my definition of success is no longer based on what I can fit inside me. That's for sure. But what it is based on is how kind and slow can I be with myself, as someone who is normally quite harsh with themselves and moves through the world at a very rapid pace, finds it hard to slow down. How generous can I be with others in sharing about this experience, rather than kind of hoarding it to myself, and also deciding others, like there's a selfishness in this, right? Where I was deciding others' opinions of me and how worthy they thought I was, before I even gave them the chance to. And that's me projecting my shit onto them. Like, no one has ever been harsher to me about the vaginismus than myself. In fact, it usually doesn't bother anyone else. I've really not had a negative experience with someone else being cruel to me about it. I'm the cruelest about it. So how generous am I in giving the others their space to like hear my story and respond and have their own reactions to that? And like how truthful can I be? How can I put the shame in the palm of my hand right here, instead of having it like projected onto my walls? Like, what if I put it here? And how truthful can I be about this really being pain and not shame? And I think so those are new definitions or new metrics for success, and I do think I'm doing a pretty good job at meeting them.
I feel that
asking
you are
for help
too.
as well. Asking people to help me hold this. That's another way.
I'm really glad that you've reframed that for yourself, and reframe sometimes isn't a very good word for it. You found your own truth, right? We all have our different truths as to what success means for us.
But something I actually wanted to ask you around this was, I look up to you a lot in the way that you're able to show yourself and others such like grace and compassion, even in the messy emotions. But I'm just curious, like, I know you've had plenty of success based on your own definition and other people's definitions in healing from this. But do you still ever struggle with the shame of it? Do you ever like meet this, do you ever revert back to meeting it in a way you did when you first began the journey of healing?
Great question. Absolutely. Shame comes into the equation occasionally. And I don't believe we're ever going to be at this 100% expectation on ourselves to be the sexually liberated, never feeling bad about her sexuality, her naughty desires, her fantasies kind of person. The pain part is gone. That is such a fantastic shift that I know we can put fully in the past and have the experience of pleasurable penetrative sex, pleasurable sex. Yet the shame part, that creeps in. Yeah, when it comes to self-pleasure, sometimes being in the moment, I'm like, those memories of I shouldn't do this come back. And the nice thing about it is that we have new tools to be able to meet ourselves in that feeling and to feel it fully rather than try to push the shame away. Just like you said,
Yeah.
shame being right here and being something that you can actually interact with and understand and make friends with, and actually deepen our experience of pleasure as a result. Because
Yeah.
our capacity to hold pain and hold shame actually increases our capacity to experience greater pleasure also.
Greater, like the more you can experience of anything, or the deeper you can experience anything, makes the next thing more malleable, for sure, for sure. But what about shame in regards to putting yourself out there in this way and with this community? Does that ever creep in? I find I'll tell you why I'm asking, so that it doesn't seem too intrusive. But I find that, like, most of the time I'm really proud of, like, the community I'm beginning to build and the work I'm putting out here. But every now and then I'm like, oh God, no one cares. This is so embarrassing. Now everyone knows about this, and like the ego comes in. This ego of, like, shame. The shame, Big Mouth, like the shame wizard from Big Mouth, that comes in. And I was wondering if you still experience that, even with the platform you have and all the, like, incredible work to do to help other people heal.
Yes, I want you to know you're not alone in that experience. For me, the way that this has shown up is when people from my personal life who don't know my story yet, let's say it's like a family friend of my parents',
Right.
and all of a sudden they do know my story because my parents shared, for example. It didn't really come from me. And then you've got somebody in my world newly in this community that I didn't have the ability to kind of share on my own first and create that connection, sort of be in my other world of this community that feels so precious and I guess different for me than some of those family friends realities that we create for ourselves, as though we're different people in those two worlds.
So how do you meet that? Like, fracture between the two worlds? It's something I'm really dealing with right now, and I think it will be beneficial for others to hear as well.
Yeah, the way that one thing you could do to meet it, and that has worked for me, is to have that conversation with that person rather than keep them at a distance. So basically create a sense of closeness in which you get to choose how your message is being delivered in a one-on-one scenario. So that then when they're being an observer of how you deliver your message in a community sense, you already feel like there is this personalization there for you.
Yeah.
Does that resonate? Or
Yeah.
perhaps this isn't really the context for you in which you feel shame.
I know it's actually it's very similar, actually, and it does
Okay.
resonate. It does resonate. I think there's, like, an element of, not an element. It is about not abandoning yourself. It's about not abandoning yourself and having the hard conversations and choosing if you have those hard conversations, and knowing that if you don't have them, it's also okay. Just make sure you
Yes.
don't leave yourself on your own.
Yeah, knowing you have a choice and you get to make that choice from a place of authenticity with yourself rather than something you're forced into. And someone says, I feel like this
Nice.
often, having shame over not being normal and not being able to enjoy something that comes so naturally to other people. Oh my goodness, yes. I was speaking about this with somebody that I support one-on-one recently, about this animal instinct that we tend to associate to having penetrative sex, as though it's this skill that is given to us in general, and it's this easy thing to access that other people have, but we don't. And that feels extra hard to digest when we feel like it's an animal instinct that we're supposed to have.
Also, I have a more controversial opinion of this.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I felt this way for so long, and I have a lot of anger that we do that we feel like we have to feel this way, because I believe most people are lying about the experiences they have because some greater society or some greater conversation has told them that's the way we have to talk about what goes on behind closed doors. I think we have, like, warped what natural is.
So you're saying a lot more people than we think actually experience shame and are in the same boat as us, even though they don't have the experience of
exactly.
vaginismus.
And and whether it be vaginismus or I mean, it could be erectile dysfunction, or maybe there's something more less physical and more emotional going on. Not to say that vaginismus isn't emotional; it's so deeply psychological as well. But I think we have this like performative outside version of what of how we need to talk about sex in the outside world, and how we need to talk about our experiences of sex, that it suddenly feels like those speaking a truth of a reality that doesn't mirror that conversation, we feel abnormal or unnatural. But I think stories like this are more common. Sex is complicated for most people. That's the fact. So in whatever way, shape, or form that might be, it doesn't just have to be vaginismus, but sex is complicated for most people, is what I am coming to understand by talking about my experiences of vaginismus. I no longer, the people that are sharing different experiences with me are helping me to believe that there is no such thing as like a natural way or a normal way.
Mm-hmm. Especially in the way that it's portrayed in the media as this
exactly
very easy, penetrative experience that I remember seeing on TV when I was little as one of the sources of my creation of what sex is, that I thought was very, very violent.
Right.
You're welcome.
Thank
yeah,
you.
And it's the sense of violence around it that is portrayed, the sense of speed, like, oh, it should be like this, but there's so much more to it than that. And that's the beauty about this journey, is we actually get to explore all facets of how we desire intimacy to look like for ourselves, what that actually looks like that is nourishing for us uniquely.
Mm-hmm. I don't believe that we have to find silver linings in our pain. I don't think you have to have bad things happen to you or live with bad experiences in order to make something. Or if you do have bad experiences or live with pain, I don't think you have to find a good reason for them. It's okay to just be upset by them. But I am grateful that I've chosen to engage with mine this way and find some form of meaning in it. I've been thinking a lot about the thought, like if nothing matters, then everything matters. So I have a choice about whether I make meaning out of this or not, and it's okay if I don't want to make meaning out of it. It just so happens that the path that was more fulfilling for me was to dive into it and find what it could possibly mean for my trajectory in this world.
And you followed your excitement.
Yeah.
You followed what felt like the right thing to put out into the world, what to create. The passion that was there was yours for the taking, and now Project Mashed is going to be coming out. I'm so excited to watch it. And you've been having incredible conversations with so many people too.
Exactly. I've been there's some really, really cool lives over. I mean, some of them are on the Mashed page. Others are on the individuals' pages themselves. But you can check out all the conversations I've been having through different highlights in the stories on the Mashed page. What Janice says. I hear that.
Same here. It's hard when people talk about sex and how easy it works for some people. I ask, what's wrong with me? Yeah.
Yeah. I've been there.
Alone.
I still go there. I mean, I'm here talking publicly right now, but I want you to know I still go there. I still go with what's wrong with me a lot, and why me. I don't have an answer for that, but I hope knowing that there's like a community that is experiencing the same thing helps. We don't heal in isolation. We heal in community. It's not. We can't do it in a vacuum.
Yeah.
So welcome.
Yeah. Well said. And tell us a bit more about the most recent sort of raffle that's going on, because everybody listening is going to want to know.
So I did a live with Dr. Amanda Olson from Intimate Rose, and she has generously gifted Project Mashed with a full set of 8 of the silicone dilators from Intimate Rose. Yeah, and Oh, someone else. I'm keeping up with the comments as well. EMDR has changed my life. I really mean that. And Mashed, the series follows. It's fragmented in a way through EMDR trauma therapy, and it explores EMDR in the series. I'm so glad you have a team. That makes me so happy. So the Intimate Rose dilators, we've got a full set of 8 to raffle off, and we're doing a raffle where anyone who contributes $5 or more to the Mashed campaign to help get the series made goes in the running to win the set of dilators. I would have been all over this before I bought my own set, because the healing tools for this diagnosis can be expensive. And I think healthcare providers should reimburse the manufacturers. I believe that. But that's a bigger bigger conversation. But I have recently, since launching Mashed, decided to keep. I still struggle with dilating, but these dilators, the Intimate Rose ones, are cute and fun and in many ways sexy and feel really safe, whether I have physical success with them or not yet. But I decided to pull them out. They no longer live under my bed in a bag of shame. They live right on my bedside table, on my bedside wall.
Amazing.
So they live right there. So I feel thrilled to be able to offer this to people, and it's running for like a week, a little under a week now. Next Wednesday at 5 p.m. is the last opportunity to enter the raffle. You just have to go to the Project Mashed page, hit the link in the bio, which will take you to our Seed and Spark page, and contribute as little as $5, and you're going to running to win them.
It's an awesome opportunity and a fantastic set.
And no limits on where you are in the world either.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, good. And putting the dilators out into our space is such an important part of getting accustomed to them. I love that you're doing this. Yeah. Visually, you're creating friends with them.
And also, like anyone that has been in my space, I've just moved house. And so I've had people helping me move, like friends helping me move, and, some friends popping by to check out the new space. The dilators are literally directly above my bed and in front of my bedroom door. Mm-hmm. So everyone sees them when they walk in, and it's just this like incredibly connective thing. Like they're out.
Good.
And everyone sees them and says, "Good for you. Talk to me about them. Let me learn more about them." But enter the raffle. What's exciting about this to me is it gives someone the opportunity to win something that is usually quite expensive, worth it but expensive, for $5. But also, all the proceeds, 100% of the proceeds, go towards creating a series that will be bringing pelvic pain and vaginismus into the zeitgeist.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And tell me, as the last question, when can we expect, and I don't want to put any pressure or expectations on there, just as a sense of excitement, when should we be looking out for this series?
Right. So the Seed and Spark campaign ends in a little over a week. We finish on July 25th. We will then know exactly the amount of funds we have to go into production. We are currently in pre-production. We will be filming and doing principal photography fall this year. So September, October. And then we go into post-production, and with the aim of bopping about a bunch of the larger film festivals next year. So I would say you can expect a very polished series accessible for everyone around spring of next year.
Beauty.
But there will be many, many updates and collaborations in between then. Like I said, Project Mashed is not the series alone. Project Mashed is a wider pelvic pain awareness network, and we have a lot of plans for different collaborations and different art installations, different lives and YouTube series, and potentially a little documentary, and even a children's book. Yes. A lot of things in the works. But Mashed, the series, will be filmed this fall.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. I invite everybody watching to go give Project Mashed and your personal page, which is tagged in this live, or I will in the comments, a follow. You have awesome videos and not TikToks, but reels on there. They're
Yeah.
amazing. I love how you're incorporating entertainment into the conversation.
And we got to be able to laugh about it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you so much for having me. Like, this is not something I ever thought would be possible. I didn't think I'd ever be able to be ready to have a conversation like this. So it's such an honor.
You're
Thank
so
you for creating
welcome.
this space.
Witnessing your growth has been incredible. So thank you, and
Thank you.
have a fantastic rest of your day.
You too. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.